Traders, how are you? Marcello, founder of the Day Trading Academy. Today we're doing the recap of what happened in the markets last week. Well, traders, the most important thing that happened this week was the coronavirus. We obviously have to protect ourselves. Luke, All right, back to business. So the overarching idea, obviously this week, is the situation with the coronavirus. It's starting to escalate, as I told you guys it would, and it's not going to get better. It's going to get worse, just FYI. And the peak, remember, I mentioned to you guys, will be right around April or so. Since it's a respiratory virus, it won't be able, it's like the flu, for example. It won't be able to continue spreading as quickly because there won't be cold weather. So the weather will definitely help us there. Monday, there was a bloodbath. The situation outside of China is starting to accelerate. We had 200 cases reporting in Italy and also 830 in South Korea. The Dow was down over 1,000 points. It plunged 3.5%. The NASDAQ was down 3.7%. The S&P 500 3.3%. The worst day for the S&P in 2 years. The third worst drop ever. If I'm not mistaken, also the Dow had its worst drop ever. Other than that, the Treasury curve inversion deepened as bond yields hit fresh record lows. The 10-year and the 30-year took a bloodbath. That's going to be the common theme that I'm going to mention in this video. And remember, if you guys want to listen to the recap or the other videos that I'm doing, I'm putting everything on the podcast as well, so you can listen to it on iTunes or Spotify. If it's on a place that you guys listen that you can't find it on, let me know here in the comments, and I'll throw it on there. Other than that, Bloodbath Tuesday, now there's a total of 37 countries. Coronavirus is definitely starting to escalate into a pandemic. And Bloodbath Wednesday, the Dow Jones had its worst second day. Lost on record on Tuesday, went down 6.8% or close about 1,911 points, just over that. An estimated $1.7 trillion in value has been wiped off the S&P 500 in the last 2 days. And Thursday, guess what? Bloodbath, correction territory, a loss of 10% from the high. It took 6 consecutive days of losses of the week, and all three major U.S. indices had the worst week since the financial crisis of 2007-2008. So, amazing week, guys. 3.4 trillion has been wiped off from the S&P 500 in the last 6 trading days as well. The fastest such movement in over 70 years. So definitely not a great week. U.S. indices went lower for the week. The Dow went down 14.10%, S&P 500 12.99%, and the NASDAQ down 11.78%. Just so you guys know, once you hit 10%, it's considered a correction. So now we're not in just a retracement, we're literally now in a correction. The Dow is down 12.77% in 2020. The S&P 500 is down close to 11%, and the NASDAQ is down just over 7%. In overseas market news, the Euro... coronavirus! Be careful. Coronavirus. All right. Did you guys laugh? Very good. So, in overseas market news, all negative. Obviously, the biggest loser was the Euro stocks, 14.14%. Latin American markets, the index in Santiago went down, the biggest of all the Latin American markets, or one of the biggest, I should say. I'm looking at my notes here. I just missed the Merval, actually, in Argentina was the biggest loser at 10.37%. Africa and Middle Eastern markets, South Africa went down 12.33%. Asia and Australian markets went down 11.48%, and Thailand, the biggest loser. And I don't know if I mentioned it or not, I think I skipped over. South Africa was actually the biggest loser at 12.33% there in Africa and the Middle East. The Philippines went down 8.58%, and in Bitcoin, they went down 10.44% to about 8,741.76 cents, but it's still up over 25% this year. For all of you guys that were thinking this was going to be a time that it's going to go to 20,000, you guys can see that. It's what I always told you guys. It'll still exist. It'll go up. It'll go down. It'll be just kind of another derivative like futures or options that you can trade. But this $50,000, $100,000 nonsense. And one of the things I find very peculiar is like, isn't everybody supposed to put in their money in Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies because it's the new gold, the new currency? So that's where like the security is gonna be. You see what I mean? So you guys can see that on a week like this week, in my opinion, it should have been when Bitcoin actually should have rose, not should have gone down. And that I think tells you a lot. Other than that, financial and banking news, U.S. Treasury yields traded to record lows. The 10-year is now at an all-time low of 1.2% to 1.24%, the third consecutive day. And also the 30-year went down quite a bit as well. The reason why that's important piece of news, remember I always try to kind of, show you all the dots and how to piece them together so you can learn how to understand this stuff. That's why a lot of times I do these videos. Remember, no political stuff, right? I always mention to you guys, doesn't matter if you love or hate Trump, love or hate Obama, left, right, purple, black, white, red. I always try to be completely factual and let you guys know what it means, because I think we've had enough of this fighting and political stuff in the country already. So the reason why this is important with the U.S. Treasury yields being so low, U.S. Treasury yields, for those of you guys that are new, means the interest rates on the U.S. debt, the bonds. So the 10-year bond, for example, went to a record low that I told you a moment ago, is because everybody now is taking out of their money of equities, which are stocks, and then putting them into the bonds because they want to earn some kind of interest on their money. Well, more and more people take their money out of the stock market goes down, it's a self-fulfilling prophecy, and then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, we're in a recession. So that's why it's important. And remember that the economies in the most advanced countries in the world, United States, Canada, a lot of Europe, Australia, Singapore, Hong Kong, most of it is in the stock market. So the majority of the wealth being in the stock market, as soon as that goes down, people stop spending money. And that's a problem because in a lot of these most advanced countries, much more than 50% of the actual economy is literally consumerism, right? It's going out and buying stuff, retail, all that stuff. So when it comes to this, if the stock market drops, people feel less rich. They see their Roth IRA or their 401k coming down. They don't want to spend any money because they're afraid. If people stop spending money, then again, we're in a self-fulfilling prophecy because 70% of the U.S. economy is literally consumers, right? So keep that in mind. Now, the money markets now are betting on a prospect of more Fed rate cuts this year. We had quite a few last year. The Fed being the Central Bank of the United States, they did say that they weren't going to raise it this year, but now that might force their hand due to the fact that we had the situation with the coronavirus. The US dollar remains a 52-week high. I'm here at the moment in Colombia. I'm traveling here next week to Europe and Asia, but great time to buy property in Colombia. Just hit a record high, over 33,500. You're literally getting a 40-50% discount on any property that you're buying down here. You wait, let's say 3 or 4 years, the dollar comes back down. You're literally automatically making, outside of the standard, 5, 6, 7%, whatever the real estate is going to go up by 15% if you fix it up, maybe more. But it's great deal. In commodities, U.S. crude went down 19.25% to 44.76. International crude went to negative 15.79% to $50.52. International crude, remember, is called Brent. On Monday, it plunged as the IEA, the International Energy Agency, stated that the global demand for oil growth has fallen to its lowest level in a decade and may be reduced further due to the fact of the coronavirus outbreak. The demand expected for the contract in Q1 is going to be the first quarterly decrease since the financial crisis. So the first time that they're expecting the demand for oil to go down rather than up every year since 2008, 2009. Oil plunged to its lowest level in 14 months, and global investors are also plowing into gold to look for something a little bit more secure due to the spread of the coronavirus as well. The global amount of bullion in exchange-traded funds, or ETFs, swelled by the most in more than a month on Tuesday. The equity sank further, which meant a 25th consecutive day of inflows into these exchange-traded funds. Essentially, just to make it a simple picture for you, if you don't know what an ETF is, it's basically a fund, in this case, that supposedly has physical gold. They say they have physical gold. I think differently, but we all like our own conspiracy theories. So the people are putting in their money because they want to have exposure to gold, because people, when they get nervous or scared, they go back to what they think is secure, things like the dollar, which is why it's at a 52-week high. The government bonds, because obviously the government in the US is never going to go bankrupt, right? So that's why this is happening as well. And this is the largest holdings ever held in these funds. There was 2,624.7 tons of inflows. Gold went down for the week 3.65%. It went down to 1,586. Silver went down 10.87% at $16.73. Returns from commodities have plunged to their lowest level since 1987 due to the fears that the coronavirus is going to affect demands for commodities. Everything from cotton to sugar to oil, absolutely everything. Dame un segundo. Coronavirus! Just kidding. I'll be right back. In political news, the Israeli elections are next week, are going to bring many settlers in the occupied West Bank closer to a long-held goal of annexation of the settlements. However, it may also create the new Palestinian state. After 10 years in power, Netanyahu pledged that if he wins, he's going to go ahead and annex those states, because he's trying to hold on to power, because he's having a lot of problems politically right now. Chancellor Merkel has held power for 15 years through her party, the CDU, which are the Christian Democrats, and now they're going to have an election for their successor, as she stated that she's not going to continue in power. She's not going to go for re-election in 2021. And political hardliners won the parliamentary elections in Iran with about 3/4 of the seats, about 75%. The regime is claiming that they want a mandate for a confrontational stance towards the U.S. It's really funny in some of these countries. Iran, for example, no matter what happens, death to America, and then the elections happen and death to America, and then 20 years later, death to America. It doesn't matter what happens. It's, same death to America. So they're just one of those countries that's like that. Even though I find it ironic that, if you guys don't know the story behind Iran, the United States is what created that hodgepodge of situation that we have down there now. So good old Uncle Sam doing the right thing all the time. Other than that, thousands of moderates and reformers were barred from running, and as a result, that's why they did have close to this the 3/4 of the seats, and the turnout was the lowest in a parliamentary election since the Islamic Revolution in 1979. Interesting. In economic news, the sales of new U.S. single-family homes reached a 12.5-year high in January, with sales jumping 7.9%, highest level since July of 2007 during the housing market strength of the boom there before the crisis. No real evidence yet also that the epidemic of the coronavirus is affecting the U.S. economy just yet, but they are expecting struggling manufacturing sector to take a blow to the supply chain disruptions and exports. This might lead the first U.S. recession in the last 11 years. In corporate news, Bob Iger, the CEO of Walt Disney, is stepping down after 15 years. He held the reins of the world's biggest entertainment firms. He opened up the biggest park that they have in near Shanghai. He's going to be expected to stay as the executive chairman, until 2021. The theme park's head, named Bob Chapek, is going to be the new CEO. During his reign, the share price went up by 400% to over $127. In Amazon news, they're going to open their first full-size cashierless store in Seattle, in a neighborhood called Capitol Hill, 10,400 square feet. 5 years in the making. It's going to stock 5,000 items, including fresh produce, meats, bakery treats, and alcohol, and incorporates the same technology found in the 24 or so Amazon Go locations. In trade news, Trump has arrived in India for a 2-day visit. They are doing a bilateral trade to be able to go ahead and increase the relationship that we have with India, which is, if I'm not mistaken, the fastest growing economy in the world now. It just eclipsed China. The bilateral trade is about $160 billion. And Trump says that the two nations are going to shortly announce a amazing, incredible trade deal. The best ever in history. And Trump says that they're going to buy $3 billion worth of military equipment, which they normally would buy from Russia. They're no more buyer. They normally buy from Russia, let's say, including attack helicopters as the two countries deepen defense and commercial ties to try to balance the weight against China. And also, they're probably going to want to be part again of a system. It's a tariff system called the Generalized System of Preferences, which Trump did terminate in 2019, which provides additional benefits to some of the products from least developed nations. Other than that, both sides are working to narrow differences from far goods, medical devices, digital trade, and also new tariffs. European Union, is hoping to de-escalate the trade tensions with the U.S. as well. They want the U.S. to first lower the tariffs on steel to make a positive gesture in the arena of trade after a series of concessions by Brussels in recent years. In technology, there's a company called Moderna that shipped an experimental coronavirus vaccine to the U.S. government researchers 6 weeks after it started working on the immunization. Unfortunately, a vaccine is probably not going to be ready until April due to the process of testing and the approvals that would last a year. And other than that, and actually might not be ready until April, the vaccine wouldn't begin to be available or begin to be approved until April. The shares of the company shot up 15% on Tuesday, 20% on Wednesday. And in investment news, the U.S. is preparing to impose more sanctions on Venezuela's oil sector. Trump is claiming that they're going to try to cut off the financing that they have in the country due to the fact that they're still exporting oil to countries like to India and China, for example. That's going to be the more complicated situation, to be able to choke off the only financing they basically have. And in international events this week, the Iran coronavirus deaths are at 16, which is the highest outside of China. They're obviously increasing international isolation. Nations from Italy and South Korea accelerate their emergency measures. U.S. has confirmed 53 cases. Spain has its first case on Wednesday and Thursday. Brazil confirmed its first case in Latin America, which not too many people have it here down yet. So if you guys want a place to escape, come down to the mountains in Colombia, you know what I'm saying? Other than that, Switzerland confirmed its first case. Officially, as of 25th of February, globally, there are 80,000 infected, over 2,700 deaths, near 28,000 recoveries. It's about 35%. Algeria, Denmark, Greece, Norway, Pakistan, Romania, and Sweden also report the first cases. The IMF and the World Bank are considering scaling down their posh meetings of the people who run the world in April, saying that they could hold them by teleconference, obviously to save the environment and not go around in all these private jets like they normally do. And no, it's actually for the coronavirus. And the US and South Korea are postponing their joint military drills as well. Australia has initiated emergency measures. Taiwan has raised its epidemic response, and Saudi Arabia banned its pilgrimages to Mecca. They're actually banning the visas to be able to go ahead and stop that from happening. If you guys don't know, in the Quran, which is the Bible for Muslims, the Muslims, they have to go one time to Mecca in their lifetime, which is the holy city for the Muslims. Other than that, Turkey is now faced with a new wave of Syrian migrants and 22 more dead soldiers in Idlib. It says that there's no longer going to stop the Syrian refugees from reaching Europe, which a Turkish official claimed late on Thursday. It's going to be a big problem for Europe, since they're already having problems assimilating the refugees that they already accepted. And in the interesting facts this week, former Egyptian President Hosni Mubarak, which ruled for 30 years, died on Tuesday at the age of 91. Even though he was a partner of the West in fighting the Islamists, he presided over an area of stagnation and repression at home, and also was a victim in the early time of the Arab Spring and the revolutions in the Middle East. Hong Kong is announcing 120 billion Hong Kong dollars, or about $15.4 billion US, in stimulative measures to be able to support the economy. Obviously, they had the situation with all the protests that went on for weeks and months, and now they have the situation with the coronavirus outbreak as well. One of the things that's interesting is that they're giving $1,284 to each permanent resident of the city, aged 18 or older. And again, remember what I told you in the beginning. Consumerism, right? You give the people the money, they go out and spend it, starts to move the economy. That's how they try to manipulate the economy. The Trump administration is considering invoking special powers through a law called the Defense Production Act of 1950, which would help to rapidly expand the manufacturing of domestic protective masks and clothing to combat the coronavirus. The biggest producers of the face masks are 3M and Honeywell as well. There's a company that went up 600% since the outbreak. There's a company called Alpha Protec and another one, N95 maker, which is another company that produces these kind of masks and those things that we need for epidemics. Thailand's constitutional court disbanded Future Forward, which is the third largest political party in Thailand. This is now the 8th party that they have dissolved since 2006. World's oldest government leader at 94, the Malaysian Prime Minister Mahathir, stepped down on Monday. Obviously, people aren't happy, Congress either, so they had to change things. And the resident islands, Greek islands of Lesbos and Chios, fought riot police in a futile attempt to stop the expansion of detention camps to house more migrants that are largely coming from the Middle East through Turkey. That's your news for this week, guys. Let me know if you guys have any questions. Don't forget hashtag Ask Marcello for all the questions. Don't forget to subscribe. We'll see you next week. Don't forget. It's dangerous out there.
Oh, I can actually feel the... Anyway.
See you next week.